What if your breath wasn't just what keeps you alive, but what makes reality listen? Most people breathe without knowing they're doing it. They rush through life with lungs full, but awareness empty. They think breath is background. But what if it's the signal in the noise? Every inhale is not just air, it's information. Every exhale is not just release, it's a command. And between the two, a field that responds, not to your thoughts, but to your rhythm. Ancient mystics knew this long before we gave it names. They spoke of breath as sacred current, a bridge between the seen and unseen. Now, science is catching up. It's learning what they knew all along. That breath carries coherence, that your nervous system doesn't just mirror the breath, it obeys it. Right now you're breathing, but is it automatic, shallow, shaped by pressure, pace, habit, or is it deliberate, grounded, awake? Because breath is not background. It's the first technology you ever used, the original interface, the first yes to life. You didn't learn to breathe. You arrived through breath, before language, before identity, before thought. There was rhythm, inhale, exhale, awareness, riding waves of intention. And somewhere along the way, we forgot. We made breath a reflex, let urgency hijack the most sacred code in the body. We started surviving through breath, not remembering how to shape reality with it, but the breath remembers. And so do you. This is not about technique, not about control. It's about returning to the frequency that was always there, beneath the noise, beneath the story, beneath the mind. Welcome to the original signal. The breath is the message, and you are the messenger. So before we begin, take a breath. And if you're ready to align with this energy, type 777 in the comments to lock in the frequency of divine alignment. Tap the like button to let the algorithm know your soul is awake. And if you feel someone else needs this, share it. Be the signal. Now, close your eyes. Breathe in, but not like before. Not as a reflex, not as a need, but as if the world is beginning again, inside you. Because in a way, it is. Every conscious breath is a restart, a reset, a sacred moment outside of thought and deep within awareness. This rhythm, inhale, exhale, it's not just physiological, it's cosmic, it's cellular. It's the rhythm every tree, every tide, every planet knows by heart, and it lives inside you. We've been conditioned to treat breath as background, to treat life as a checklist of urgency. But the ancients knew better. They saw breath not just as survival, but as a portal, a bridge between the visible and the invisible, between time and timelessness. When you were born, you didn't speak. You didn't think. You breathed. That first inhale, it wasn't just a gasp for life. It was a sacred initiation, a contract with form, a signal to the universe. I'm here. I accept. And yet, we forgot. We let the breath become mechanical, a background shadow. We started living from the mind, analyzing, performing, predicting, while the body whispered, breathe, not to survive, but to return. Because the breath is not something you do, it's something you remember. It is the axis of perception, the spindle on which time and consciousness spin. It's how awareness anchors itself in the now. Every inhale draws your energy inward. Every exhale returns it to the field. And in the silence between them, reality listens. There's a moment, so brief, so still, where the breath stops. Not because you hold it, but because something deeper takes over. A pause not made of control, but of trust. A stillness, not of absence, but of full presence. And that moment is sacred. It's when the observer awakens. You stop reacting and begin responding. You shift from thought to frequency, from noise to knowing, from force to flow. You start to feel more, need less. You realize breath is not just oxygen. It is structure, pattern, intention, and the field, the subtle architecture of reality. It doesn't respond to what you think. It responds to what you radiate. And what you radiate, well, is shaped by how you breathe. When your breath is anxious, shallow, reactive, you shrink. Your body tightens. Your vision narrows. You scan for threats. And so, life reflects that state back to you. But when your breath deepens, when it slows, when it drops into the belly, your system shifts. You stop resisting. You stop chasing. You become receptive. And in that receptivity, new awareness enters, not from the mind, but through the body, through rhythm, through stillness. This is not a technique. It's a return to source. Shamans, monks, mystics, they all knew. The breath, when remembered, opens the passage back to the self. Not the self that performs, but the one who witnesses, the quiet, ever-present watcher who's always been here, waiting for you to remember. Because breath isn't passive, it's an instrument of presence, of power, of prayer. And when you learn to hold that rhythm like a sacred drum, your entire experience begins to shift. Not because you forced it, but because you finally match the frequency of who you already are. Let the world rush. Let the noise continue. But inside you, there is a still, steady rhythm. And every time you return to it, you realign. You begin again. There is a part of you that has never once been overwhelmed. No matter how intense the moment, no matter how loud the chaos, it exists beneath the panic, beneath the questions, beneath the stories you've told yourself. It doesn't need to speak. It doesn't argue with reality. It simply watches, patiently, silently, the silent witness, the calm in the center of your ever-turning world. And no matter how far you wander, it never leaves you. It never pulls you back. It simply waits until you remember. And how do you remember? Not through more thinking, not through solving or striving. You remember through breath. Not any breath, but the kind that arrives with presence and settles without effort. The kind of breath that asks for nothing and gives everything. Breath is the messenger between your body and your being. It is rhythm, not language, and rhythm is the architecture of truth. When you breathe consciously, you shift from identifying with thoughts to becoming the space that holds them, from reaction to presence, from fragmentation to coherence. You remember, you are not your fear. You are not your story. You are not even your healing. You are the presence that holds it all without needing to fix any of it. The more you return to breath, the more you begin to feel the sacred pause. That moment between inhale and exhale, where time softens and reality listens. In that space, something ancient stirs. You begin to see not with your eyes, but with your inner vision. You feel without being swallowed. You witness your patterns, not as enemies, but as echoes. You realize healing isn't something you do, it's something you allow. It happens when you stop grasping for peace and begin becoming the space that peace can rest within. Breath makes that space real, not by pushing the noise out, but by making you still enough to hold it. The observer within doesn't try to fix, doesn't try to understand, it simply notices. And in that noticing, the resistance dissolves, the chaos quiets, not because it disappears, but because you are no longer tangled in it. You begin to feel without drowning, to remember who you are without performing it. Breath anchors you in the moment. It builds a rhythm of safety in the body, a resonance of truth in the soul, and in that rhythm, you realize nothing is missing, not peace, not purpose, not clarity. They were never outside of you. They were only waiting for your presence to return. So when life speeds up, when the world asks too much, Return to breath, not to escape, but to re-enter, not to bypass, but to go deeper. Because the moment you breathe with awareness, you step into your own sanctuary. Not as someone seeking answers, but as someone who remembers. They've always had them. You stop chasing clarity like a prize to earn and start embodying it as your natural state of being. This is where your power lives, not in what you can control, but in what you can hold. Not in how loudly you fight, but in how silently you listen. And the witness, that quiet intelligence inside you, it does not shout, it whispers, and its voice sounds exactly like your breath. You were never meant to look outside yourself for peace. Not truly. Yes, the world offers beauty, awe, wonder, but only when your inner space is clear enough to receive it. Because when the mind is cluttered, even the most sacred landscape feels distant. And when the body is tense, even love can feel like pressure. That's why the breath matters. Because breath doesn't just calm you, it grounds you. It brings you back, not to safety outside, but to the only sanctuary that cannot be taken from you, your inner temple. And this temple, it isn't built in a day. It's built in every breath you take with awareness. With every inhale, you create space. With every exhale, you reinforce it. Over time, those breaths become bricks, pillars, foundation. You begin to feel it, not as imagination, but you are returning. And this temple, it's not a place of escape. It's not where you go to avoid life. It's where you remember how to move through it. You become less reactive, not because you shut out the world, but because you've built something inside that's strong enough to stay open. You stop rushing into decisions. You stop absorbing other people's chaos. You start choosing your energy, not out of habit, but from a grounded knowing. This is who I am now. And breath makes that choice possible, not by forcing stillness, but by revealing that stillness was always beneath the noise. The breath doesn't fix you. It reminds you you were never broken. It doesn't change your circumstances. It shifts the place from which you see them. And that shift changes everything. Suddenly, Orny, the pain isn't your identity. The fear isn't the final answer. The confusion isn't the truth. You become someone who notices without collapsing. You hold space for the full spectrum of your humanity without losing your center. This is the work, and it's quiet. It won't get applause. It won't trend, but it will change your life. Because once you've built this temple inside, nothing outside can knock you off course. Yes, you'll still feel, you'll still fall, but you'll know where home is, and it won't be outside. It will be here, in the pause between breaths, in the silence beneath thought, in the knowing that has always been there, waiting for you to stop running and finally enter. So when the world gets loud, return to breath. When everything feels uncertain, return to breath. When you forget who you are, return to breath. Not because breath is the goal, but because breath is the door. And the temple within, it's not something you have to build from scratch. It's already there. You just have to remember how to step inside. And every conscious breath is a key, but you are returning. And this temple, it's not a mystical place to escape. It's not where you go to avoid the world. It's where you go to remember how to move through it. You become less reactive, not because you suppress emotions, but because you've built something so rooted, it doesn't get swept away. You stop rushing, you stop absorbing, you start choosing from presence, not from fear, not from habit. Breath makes that possible, not because it forces stillness, but because it reveals. Stillness has always been there. The breath doesn't fix you. It reminds you you were never broken. It doesn't change your circumstances. It changes your vantage point. And that shift, that internal reorientation, changes everything. The pain is no longer who you are. The confusion loses its grip. The fear stops running the show. You become the one who notices without collapsing, the one who feels without drowning, the one who remembers without performing. And this is the quiet miracle. Because in that breath-born stillness, you begin to radiate gently, powerfully, unmistakably. Others feel it, even if they don't know why. You shift rooms with your silence. You soothe tension without words, not because you try, but because your field has changed. This is breath work too, not as a technique, but as a way of being. When you stop trying to control the future and start aligning with the truth already pulsing within you. You stop thinking positive and start vibrating in coherence, and coherence begins with conscious breath. So next time you feel lost, scattered, overwhelmed, don't rush to fix it. Don't escape the moment. Just sit, breathe, let the chaos settle without interference. Let the old patterns rise, let the discomfort surface, and instead of pushing it all away, let the breath hold it. Because inside that breath, there's a different kind of awareness, one that doesn't rush, one that doesn't grasp, one that listens inward. That's where your guidance lives. That's where alignment begins. And the longer you stay, not controlling, not resisting, just breathing, the more magnetic you become. Because breath isn't just a wellness tool, it is spiritual intelligence, primal, silent, wise. It's the thread that ties your body to your soul, your now to your infinite. Every inhale, a soft remembering. Every exhale, a quiet return. Until one day, you realize you were never disconnected. Not really. You don't reach for trust. You become it, not through logic, but through rhythm. You don't need to know what's next. You just become available to it, and your breath leads the way again and again and again. Eventually, all the seeking fades, all the striving dissolves, and what's left is simplicity. Not because you gave up, but because you saw through the noise. The thing you were chasing out there was always here. Beneath the roles, beneath the fear of stillness, beneath the survival mode stories. And when you stop running, when you let the breath slow, you meet yourself again. Not the version you've been managing, but the one who has always been waiting, the real you. Still, whole, present. And from that place, you don't need to prove. You don't need to strive. You don't even need to heal. You simply are. And the world feels it. You no longer attract from your wounds. You attract from your wholeness. You no longer chase what isn't meant. You begin to resonate with what is. Because stillness doesn't isolate you. It clarifies you. You begin to walk with softness. But your presence there becomes unmistakable. You respond, not react. You flow, not fight. You feel without being consumed. And finally, you begin to hear, not the noise of the world, but the wisdom of your breath, the subtle guidance, the quiet yes, the unshakable number. And when you follow that, life unfolds, not because you forced it, but because you aligned. This is the gift of the breath, not someday, not later. Now so return, not once, not just in crisis, but as rhythm, as ritual, as a form of devotion, not to an outcome, but to your own aliveness. Let breath be your compass. Let stillness be your strength. Let softness be your revolution. Because your center cannot be shaken. It only needs to be remembered. You don't need more fixing. You don't need more control. You only need more presence. And the path back was always breath. Always breath.